Hello, my name is Ildiko,
And I'm Phil.
and this is the My Open Source Experience podcast, where we discuss all the things about the mechanics of open source in business and in communities. Follow the podcast on your favorite platform and check out the latest episode on season 3. Hello, everyone. I am super excited because we have Ashan Senevirathne with us today. And he is active in the telecom ecosystem. He's working for a telecom operator these days. And this will be a great opportunity to talk about open source in the context of an industry segment that is really highly regulated. So some of the things are not as simple in the telecom ecosystem as they look like, or maybe they are. Ashan will tell us today. But before we go and talk about the mechanics of open source in telecom, Ashan, can you please introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us and the audience about yourself. What is your tech background and what do you do today?
Thanks for introducing me. My name is Ashan Senevirathne. I work as a product owner at Swisscom. Swisscom is the leading telecom operator in Switzerland. So my role is mainly focused on delivering a cloud-native orchestration platform for mobile workloads. And one of the key roles in my position is also to drive the cloud native transformation within the organization with other colleagues in our in the organization. And my background, I've been working in as a platform engineer on the infrastructure side as well as in the 5G core. And also worked a little bit on the OSS BSS tooling, and now I'm working as a product owner delivering this framework.
Was your whole career journey in the telecom segment, or did you work in other areas too before joining Swisscom?
It's mainly telco. Before joining Swisscom, I was working for another operator called Telstra. It's on the other part of the world in Australia. It's been a similar tech stack, but different approaches to solving a similar problem statement. But I guess more from the technical stack point of view, I've been working on the infrastructure side and also the application and a little bit more on the orchestration and tooling aspects.
As you mentioned, telecom companies, I think this could be a good time to learn a little bit about the telecom industry and telecom operators. It's a highly regulated industry segment, I think, mostly all around the globe. And mentioning things like SLAs, like service level agreements. So there are really strict requirements in terms of once a network is up and running, like how much it has to be up and running continuously. So I would like to dive into this a little bit to give context for those in the audience who don't have the experience in the telecom industry segment beyond, having the phone and making phone calls and connecting to the internet and having data available and all that. So who never really worked in this segment. So one thing that I think most people probably heard at one point is this 5 nines being thrown out. Can you explain a little bit what that term means?
So the term 5 nines means you need to have 99.999% of uptime, meaning that for the services that you offer within the telco, etc., meaning the service is available almost all the time with less than 5 minutes of downtime or in a year. Now, in theory, it looks nice, or it looks like very promising, or in slides, etc. But traditionally in a telco, we were focused on not to fail. So failure is not failing is not a thing, right? But the mindset that was to build system, it's so rigid and also redundant that failure was almost like it's unthinkable. That's why I think you mentioned this traditional telcos are thinking of this regulatory and the compliance reliability aspect. Um, One thing at Swisscom is we are shifting to becoming from a so-called like a traditional telco to a techco. It's also a big term within the whole telco industry, I think now. And we are embracing modern practices like SRE and cloud native principles. And the focus has shifted from avoiding failure to embracing failure. So what it means is now we are also looking into how to fail fast, recover even faster, and how to build systems that are more resilient by default. And in this context, mainly within the 5G core, um, please stop me if I'm going into too much detail. But in the 5G core, we have looked into Kubernetes, and that's a big role in this transformation. And it's an open source project by Google. So it brings a lot of value, and the Kubernetes itself, it brings self-healing and the scalability features. And it helps us to build these networks that can adapt to failure. So um, it somehow steers away from this having this not to fail mindset, or like having 5 nines principle, to have fail fast and build these reliable networks in a way.
So you mentioned the term techco as opposed to telco, if I heard it correctly. Um, to confirm, did that or does that term refer to the approach to how to build the network?
Yes and no. So it goes in many directions, but just to summarize the concept, we want to move away from treating the software coming from the vendor as a black box into a white box approach. So we want to be in control of the software that we receive, and also do the integration. So one of the key things that we do within my organization is, if you take a traditional telco, um, how we orchestrate changes into the network, we do it outbound of Kubernetes. So we bring proprietary tools outside the Kubernetes layer to deploy and lifecycle the network functions and the core. Again, I'm talking within the context of the 5G core, or within the cloud native landscape. And what we are aiming to do within Swisscom is to bring this into Kubernetes in band. So some of the tooling that we use from the CNCF, and some we need to implement by ourselves, means we need to treat them as white boxes and understand the code, how it's done, how things are configured. So it's mainly having this mindset of doing this bottom-up approach, community-driven, and also having this mindset of treating the software as code, and also bring them into this Kubernetes in-band nature. Yeah. And maybe just to complete the picture, open source is a key part of the journey, becoming a techco. We have started adapting like these cloud native technologies, like as I mentioned, Kubernetes, the Prometheus, the Helm, and we also establish clear free and open source guidelines within the company, and in order to ensure the compliance and best practices. Yeah, and we have open source few tools now, or contribute to the community within the organization. Maybe we can cover later. And maybe the most important part is we also have, within Swisscom, we also have this vision of being innovators of trust. You might see that when you search Swisscom, etc., where we believe the industry transformation it isn't about like competing, but also cooperating with others. So we have this mindset of contributing to the community.
That is amazing to hear. Just going back a little bit to our earlier conversation about the 5 nines. Is that requirement still there, or this whole, let's say, mindset shift is also changing some of the requirements or how they are interpreted or met?
So we do define SLOs for services, but that's only on the service layer. Um, so when I say service, it let's put it this way. One example would be a user would like to use the internet. So that's a service or like a user journey. There we need to have this reliability aspect of X amount of nines. Underneath you have resources, right? These network functions, and we want to build this infrastructure so it can fail and recover faster. And this is where the biggest value of Kubernetes come into play, and also how we lifecycle the network core. Because if something fails, it should be recovered easily, and if you have the right redundancy, um, we don't have to fix it the next day, or we don't need to fix it overnight. We can wait till the next day, and where the network is available throughout the night time, etc. So that's the mindset, rather than like being afraid to touch the network, right? So you do something and let's not touch it for the next 20 years, right? We want to embrace failure and making sure that these things recover very fast.
Right, because what you're saying is that service level agreement is actually enforced and is still in play, even though
Yeah.
you're failing fast underneath, because you've got the redundancy, because you've got the systems in place, that Kubernetes and that set of tools in containerization and orchestration of those containers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not. I mean, this whole reliability aspect is like something that Swisscom has taken very seriously. We have this concept of service reliability procedure. So it's not only we are applying this on the 5G infrastructure; it's also going into the 4G network functions, etc. Because a service going into the internet is the same service. Underneath, the user doesn't care if you use like the 4G infrastructure or the 5G. Obviously, you need the speeds and etc. But from a reliable point of view.
One thing that I remember hearing a lot of times from operators is that they don't have the people, and they don't have the people with the right skill set when it comes to bringing more open source in, and especially getting involved and invest in upstream work. What is your experience?
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge. Because telcos, we have traditionally been more focused on operations and maintenance work, right? And there's less on cutting edge development and innovations that you see in the software world. So within the telco context, um, and so yeah, as I mentioned, like we are also going through this telecom transformation where we embrace these SRE practices, cloud native tools, and also contributing to open source projects. And we also focused a lot on fostering this culture where engineers are encouraged to engage in upstream and contribute to the open source communities. We also promote internally participating in these conferences such as KubeCon, Open Source Summit, etc. So yeah, I mean, it also helped us to attract good talents by participating in these things. Because we can always showcase one of these talks that we've done in these conferences, and also showcase these tools that we have open source. So there's a lot of support needed from internally within the company, but at the same time, it's also very rewarding to see when we get like new talent, and after hearing from someone like, hey, I saw this presentation at KubeCon, and it seems quite nice, etc. Yeah.
So it seems like that this techco transformation is also kind of leading towards a change in the composition of the workforce within the companies. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's a big cultural shift, and it's not just the tools, etc. I don't think that having the right tools will change this. It's mainly on the mindset and the culture.
So this tech transformation sounds really exciting, and it also kind of sounds like a bit of a cutting edge in the telecom operator segment. Like, is Swisscom kind of leading this movement within operators, or do you see others doing the same thing as well, and this being kind of an industry-wide movement?
Swisscom is one of the major leaders in this game. At the same time, we also want others to join forces. And there's Deutsche Telekom, Orange, BT, TELUS, etc., having the same movement, but I think they have different focus areas in the sense that, from my view, Deutsche Telekom is more into this cloud native, having this infrastructure, right? They have their own bare metal as a service solution, where we are focused more on having the 5G core and the workloads deployed in a cloud native way, and also having the configuration or the infrastructure provisioning done in a cloud native way. So I think it's a mix, and also having this mix is very good because we can also share different viewpoints and also our different perspectives. And yeah, I see there's a big elevation of the whole industry together. We've also collaborated on writing a white paper together with multiple operators, and yeah, I think there's the movement. Obviously, everyone's in different phases, but having this mix is quite nice because different operators bring different perspectives. Yeah.
Is this also a mix in terms of like relying on open source as well as investing in open source projects?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one project I mentioned was Project Nephew. There, multiple operators are involved. There is another initiative called Cloud Native Testing Initiative, CNTI. The white paper that I mentioned, it's part of that. So it addresses how we want to see the cloud native network functions and the infrastructure being delivered by vendors. And there's also Project Silver as part of the Linux Foundation, that it's mainly driven by Orange and Deutsche Telekom. Swisscom is also part of it. So we also saw an opportunity that multiple operators are using IPAM, like IP management. It's a must for network functions because you have the sticky IPs, etc., the nature of the telco, right? So we implemented the Kubernetes operator called Netbox operator. This operator does the IP management within Kubernetes layer, and we have open sourced it now, and we have seen good traction from the other operators, etc., that wanting to use it. It's also in discussions to integrate into the Project Silver as well. So it's quite nice. Yeah.
Now, I was just going to ask, you've mentioned the acronym SRE a couple of times. For those in the audience, would you mind explaining what that is?
Yeah. So SRE stands for Site Reliability Engineering. It's a practice that Google came up with. There's also a nice workbook that Google defined on SRE principles. For telco audience, it's done by Google. It doesn't mean that you can apply all the principles into telco or all the services, because telco has its own challenges. But some of the key principles like reliability or the release management aspects, and the right observability, we can adhere to them. again, as I mentioned, like it's not like a cookie cutter, so telcos needs to tailor it to their needs. But from the principal's point of view, it's very valuable. Yeah. So that's something that we use to improve our operations.
And how is that going? I would say, as I look at across the telco ecosystem, I think Swisscom is probably pretty close to the forefront, if not at the absolute tip of the spear, when it comes to operators looking at being able to evolve your ways of working with regard to, put something out on the network, do not touch it for the next 20 years, to something where if you're going to keep up with Kubernetes, it means you're needing to evolve that software, and the entire operations of the organization has to be substantially different. How's that transformation going?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. So, like you mentioned, like throw something into the system, do not touch it for 20 years. So, um, in a way, the telcos traditionally they have worked as I would call it like system integrators, right? So you get a software from a vendor, treat it as a black box, and then roll it to the production or to the network. Um, we do work with Kubernetes and with the tooling, but majority of the time where the transformation needs to happen or where we focus is also on the people aspect, or the cultural or the organizational side. So in the context to SRE and cloud native journey, we do embrace a lot of this collaborative aspect. As I mentioned, this community driven aspect. We do write the code in a way it's very modular, so it's shared within other teams, and also we promote the teams to contribute to the code, etc. And at the same time, the Kubernetes itself is evolving, and so does the tooling around Kubernetes. For an example, the monitoring aspect, the security, and how do you orchestrate these things? So it keeps evolving, and we keep trying to bring the telco stuff into the Kubernetes in band, which has been a challenge so far. But the journey goes on.
Yeah, not an easy transformation, right? I mean,
Yeah,
very much
exactly.
so. So,
Yeah.
like I said, from what I've seen, I think Swisscom is again very early on that curve, which is very good for your organization, I think.
Your organization has the CTO office's support when it comes to relying and leveraging open source and building guidelines to get involved. Were you part of the group of people who worked with the CTO office to achieve this stage?
Not really. The guidelines were there, but it keeps evolving because we are new to the game within Swisscom, especially within the telco side. So we just keep evolving and learning as we go on that. Yeah.
Can you share a little more about what is in the guidelines for people to kind of imagine like what you have in place to help everyone being on the same page about how to approach open source?
I think it's different aspects like what sort of licensing you use, and how the contributions are made. So, for an example, if it's part of a CNCF, then how do you engage with that, right? Um, uh, and it could be even contributing to an existing project. So then you need to have this license agreement, and you also need to have certain memberships, etc. And the other part is one is contributing to the code. The other one is if you want to contribute your code repository. So how do you handle that? So it takes in different phases, I think. And and there's also these FOSS guidelines available online. I need to check if it's available open source. I think different projects or different organizations publishes this, and yeah, that's one way of having a start, I would say. Yeah.
In your experience, does having these guidelines help um, people sort of being on the same page within the entire company, or does it still feel like that people in some organizations within the company have more knowledge and understanding about open source versus others?
Yeah, I think having these guidelines help us to have meet the compliance standards and such. But that does not mean that open source is widely accepted within the company. There are some departments where people are more skeptical on this, right? Because people are asking, hey, do you really need to put this effort into this? And is the time spent on such things, is it worth you doing it? So this is typical when you're trying to shift an organization's culture, and the key is the education. So showing teams and the people the benefit of open source. Um, how does the innovation bring cost savings to collaboration, and making sure we have right support in place. Yeah, and also for any telco that wants to get into this, right? So for us, it has been helpful for us to innovate faster. We also reduce the vendor lock-in. As I mentioned, the some of the tools that we use from the CNCF, it's non-telco specific applications or tooling. So we don't rely on vendor on these use cases, and also it also helps us to collaborate with the wider tech community. So there's a lot of knowledge base within the tech community and etc. Yeah.
Have you or do you know anyone who's done any kind of cost calculations or calculations on savings? So kind of putting it into numbers, what you were mentioning about some of the benefits of relying on open source.
We don't have that exactly, and I can't think of any at the moment. I'm pretty sure they have done something. Um, we have some internal like internally we have some metrics like like it takes X amount of time to do it with such tools, but it took us like less time to do it using such tools, etc. But it's more from a tool point of view, not on like open sourcing, etc. um, but to add to this, right, one of the drivers of open sourcing this netbox operator that I mentioned. So netbox itself, it's one of the tools within I believe it's within CNCF. It's a IPAM solution, so it provides this IP management aspects, the VLAN, etc. At the same time, it also has infrastructure inventory capability. For us, the use case was only the IP management. So how do we manage IP addresses and the subnets or the prefixes within the Kubernetes layer? So we open source it, and now we expect the community to take this and then also implement the other features. So that aspect is there. So you have like a wider community contributing to the code. Yeah, so that's something that we look forward to.
I would like to learn a little bit more about this experience of open sourcing that tool, as well as your approach to things like, community building out the ecosystem around that now open source project, and what you're able to do if you have any set goals that you would like to achieve when it comes to that project.
Yeah, I guess in general, the most rewarding thing on working such things is also the impact of our work on the broader ecosystem. It's also like showing the mindset that we have as an organization. And because when we contribute such things or to an upstream project, we are not just solving our own problem. That's where we would like to find the value at the start, and not just ourselves, we are helping the entire community, right? So it's incredibly like fulfilling to us to know that our contributions are used by other people around the world. So that's the main motivation. And yeah, mainly we saw an opportunity to help others. So this is quite, the IP management is a crucial piece when it comes, especially on the telco applications. I mean, it is relevant to infrastructure provisioning and the management, but when it comes to the configuration, because if you look into a network function config itself, it has thousand types of like this configuration. It could be like XML format or such, and oftentimes what people don't realize it is we can provision these network functions or configure them using Ansible or Terraform or whatever the infrastructure as code tool, but it also takes us some time to prepare this configuration first. That's where we saw the opportunity to help others. And so we built this tool, which was solving a problem that we knew others in the industry were facing. And that's why we wanted to contribute to it. To add to that, how it's progressing. So we've seen a lot of interest from the community and some contributions from external developers or some feature requests from external developers. But it's still very early, so we are excited about the potential and the growth and the adoption by others, especially within the Silver community and etc.
Throughout my engagement with a lot of different organizations, I've always struggled to help them understand the relationship between using open source and contributing, in the sense that, you know, using open source is usually very easy to get approval for. You get past the license and you're done. Contributing is harder, but I always find it to be very much a symbiotic relationship, in the sense that to be able to support that component, you should be able to make those changes upstream, as opposed to doing a local fork, for example. And you mentioned both your inner source activities, where fundamentally it's the same thing, right? Getting organizations to contribute to something that's done in an inner source, as well as to an upstream community. What's been your experience there with being able to do that kind of work and do it with the justification of it's actually the way that we support our code?
You mean the open source part outside Swisscom, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been case by case, on a case by case basis. So the networks operator, it was a good opportunity for us to share the code with majority of the community. The reason being, we are mainly supporting subset of the features, right? So we expect
Right.
the rest of the community to take it from there. One of the other things is the SCC. So SCC, how it started was the config, the tool that I mentioned. Us testing the tool first and giving feedback, and we also would like to understand how the code base works. So then we started contributing to the code itself. Yeah, it's a case by case, and yeah, hopefully we can have more engagement on the networks operator side, especially. Yeah. And when it comes to open source or this community aspect, right? Telco-related open source communities tend to be a bit more specialized and focus on specific needs for telecom networks. I think you must have seen it from either like the open infra topics or Nefio or such. And the general open source community is more diverse and covers a wide range of technologies and use cases. Yeah, so that's also one observation that I see. You know, they have different perspective on how to collaborate and passion to build such tools, etc.
Yeah, and the dynamics of the communities are a lot different too, right? I mean, typically those
Yeah,
telco
exactly.
focused projects are small and focused, and Kubernetes is massive, right? With so many
Yeah,
different use cases and so many different organizations trying to fit those pieces together to fit their unique needs.
exactly. Yeah.
So you talked about the values in open sourcing this tool and project. Have you experienced any pushback or questions during any part of that process in terms of like understanding why those values are valuable to the company, or being or having any concerns about like the overhead of open sourcing a project and then maintaining that project in that open and public environment, as opposed to just having it as a library or a tool internally?
Yeah, it it is. I mean, many times, but maybe to one of the things that we actively do is we encourage everyone to contribute and build communities around these tools, not just externally, but also within the company. And also, it's not just about releasing code; it's about fostering the collaboration, knowledge sharing, and also long-term sustainability. Um, we did invest some time into open sourcing, like going through this whole process, understanding it, because it was the first time we did it in the mobile organization. Um, but the outcome was, it wasn't just open sourcing a piece of code, right? We had to refine the documentation. We had to make it modular, that it's not just Swisscom specific, it also um, complied with others. So it also gave us some after, or like some byproducts or some value, that if someone joins from within to the team, it also helps them to onboard quickly, because we have the right documentation refined, and it's easily understandable, and also many people now used it and also gave feedback, etc. um, yeah. To other part of the question, I mean, it's not just convincing, right? We also understand that the most challenging part on open sourcing something is to sustaining the momentum of the project. Um, because it's easy for anyone to get excited at the start, right? So, hey, we want to open source something, but then it also takes consistent effort to keep the community engaged, grow it, and also make sure it stays healthy. Um, so yeah, those are some of the challenges and the downsides, or something that we need to keep an eye on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at a minimum, you want to make sure that those that are responsible for the maintainership of the project, those reviewing others' code, onboarding folks who are looking to try to do something, responding to those feature requests, and nudging
Exactly.
whoever asked exactly how they might go about fixing it. Having the time to do that is the first step. And I would argue that from a management standpoint of view, a second step would properly be to actually have as part of goals and incentives for
Mm.
the year for the engineer is to actually make that community successful, and actually have the the incentives put directly onto the developer. It's not something I see very often, but I do think it is the journey that companies need to go through.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's also internal, right? I mean, the question would come like, does it make sense for you to write software regardless of open sourcing? Like, do you really want to write it, or um, purchase it from someone else? Yeah, exactly. So it's the same. So how do you keep um, the engagement going, or the momentum going? Yeah, if it's an internal development activity, etc.
Before we depart, Ashan, can you tell us something about yourself that has nothing to do with tech and nothing to do with open source? Some kind of a hobby or a fun fact about you?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of hiking and nature activities, so I always try to spend my time with my family in the mountains. One of the reasons I was so attracted to Switzerland, or to move to Switzerland and work at Swisscom. So yeah, I love getting out into the nature, or to the mountains wherever I can, and it's a great way to disconnect from the tech world and recharge. It could be 1 or 2 days or a week. So I think, yeah, that's one of the things I try to do or motivate to do all the time.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you go to areas and there's literally no connection, no connectivity. So disconnecting, like literally disconnecting because your phone has 0 bars.
Yeah. Well, not Swisscom. Swisscom is a special one.
Do you have any favorite hiking places either in Switzerland or anywhere else on the globe?
Yeah, Switzerland is it's nice. So one of the closest places to where I live, it's called this Bernese Oberland. So there are nice hikes that you can find, and yeah, there are famous places like Grindelwald, etc. So um, it's nice, yeah. Even if it's during winter time or over summer or autumn, it's different sceneries and different experiences.
Nice.
Do you also do climbing or you're more of a hiker?
More of a hiker, yeah. I will try it when my kids grow up, hopefully. Yeah, yeah.
Have you done climbing before, or is it something that you think you might get into with your kids when they are older?
I did in Australia. This was like 1 or 2 years I did, but then we also moved to a different place, which was a bit. We got busy with that work, and then yeah.
I've only did some wall climbing when I was at university, and you had to pick something to do as a kind of a workout kind of thing. And they had a wall climbing gym, or whatever that's called. And yeah, I remember not being able to hold a toothbrush in the evening because my fingers were totally useless. So it was an interesting 6 months. I mean, I got a little bit of strength in my hands at that time, but then I also discovered that I have a tad bit of fear of heights. So it wasn't the best sport for me, and I mean, I also I would imagine that it's very different when you're out in nature and do the climbing there as opposed to locked into a room with little things sticking out on the wall and just, go up and then down and then go up and then down.
Yeah, and I think US has nice locations, and also it's well what do you call, like, well promoted, right? And there's a big community over there.
Yeah, there's a lot of climbing here.
Yeah, there's quite some, I think, around here too. We have some big mountains and volcanoes and whatnot in the Washington State area. So yeah, I only do hiking myself. Like climbing is next level. Sometimes even the hikes are like, I don't know which one I'm doing right now, and then I realized that I accidentally went off the the trail, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's why it's so hard.
You're scrambling bad enough, you realize I should probably be tied in here. Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, but no, I love nature too.
And with that, that's all, folks. That was our episode for today. We want to hear from you. Please leave comments under the episodes that you watched. Share your feedback and share your experiences to continue the conversation. And let us know what topics you would like to hear next. Stay tuned because the next episode is just around the corner.